Welcome back. It is time to get going again on the ATC70. As you can see in the last video, we did a guide coat on these legs and on the tank. So we'll just dive right into this. This tank will get lined, and that is going to be very quickly done on the video, because I've got plenty of other videos that you can look up to see how all that works, how you line the tank and so forth. So when you see the tank next, it will be lined, and then we'll start the body work. So while we're waiting for the tank liner to set up, the epoxy to set up, got to take all these little pieces of rubber off, and then we're going to do this with the bead blaster. So we're going to get these all ready to go. Here's a before and after. It's going to look really nice on there. So the tank has cured, so we will take a look at that. A lot of care was taken lining this tank. You can see, I don't know if you can see how shimmery it is, but it has locked everything up. It is sealed, and then I took really fine care in getting all the epoxy out of the two fuel line connections here. So next we've got a little bit of wet sanding and filling to do. It's sanded down, this side flat, ready to go. This right here, maybe, I may need a little filler, but maybe not. Little things like this, that high build primer will bring it all up and you can sand it out. But there's definitely some low spots in here, this right here, this right here. And I'm gonna go ahead and probably fill here. So let's get that on. So I've filled it, 2 different batches, just little areas. They are ready for a little spot of self-etching primer and 4 or 5 real nice coats of high build primer. Then they should just sand right down and be ready to paint. And here it is with just enough of that self-etching primer to cover the metal that was exposed. So we're going to go now to the heavy coats of the high build primer. Everything's really smoothed out nice. This is going to sand out without any problem. You can see, while it's still wet, you know, that dent was there, all the usual 30-year-old little dings and scratches, all those stuff, all that's gone. Just taking the shape of brand new. It's going to look just beautiful. Probably not need any more filler at all. It's just straight and ready for paint, just to scuff and shoot. One more coat of primer just in case. I wanted to show you some of the parts that came out of the spray booth. I don't know if you can really see the finish, but it came out beautiful. Just beautiful. And these pegs are going to be, of course you're not going to see them. They're going to be underneath the frame, but boy, they're just beautiful. Nice. Black. But something happened to me that I've never have happened before. And all the chrome I sent off, it all came back. they're out of business. And I didn't call. I've always used them, and so I just send it off and with a letter saying, hey, give me a price. And I didn't hear from them for 2 weeks, and so I finally called, and all it was a message that said they've been out of business. They gave me an email address to get a hold of them. I emailed them. They emailed me back saying that they're sending it back. So, I mean, I'm going to have to find a new chromer, you know? Damn. So, got these items. Now I'm going to go back to my other avenue, which is to try and find these items like new OEM or in really good condition. This can be re-chromed. It's got a little bit of rust here, a little scratching, 3 or 4 scratches. I don't know. I think the chrome place should be able to take care of that. So I'm back onto the chrome investigation, and that's not fun.
This is with the 2 coats of color, and it's just enough to cover. So that's the directions, 2 medium coats. And I'm happy with that. Next is clear.
And there it is with 2 coats of clear. And I know that it's orange in the video, but it is Honda red in person. All shiny. Beautiful. Even got the little number down here. So let this cure up and we can start putting this little 70 into a roller condition. I want to get the tires on it, the axles, and get it to where I can push it around, and then we will probably receive the engine parts in cases this next few days, and we'll put those together. Well, this is the box of cases. Oh boy. Oh boy. Look at them all cleaned up. Very nice. Still got the tape where I told them to tape off so they don't take off any material here or here for the bearings. Let's see what the cylinder head. It was pretty bad. Oh yeah, look at that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, this is going to be good. Now, the mystery is, did I send the little pieces for the rear brakes? So let's put this down and see what's in this little bag here. These are just the... Yeah, my lighting's not too good, but these pieces. Oh, I think I did. Let's see here. I did the intake. I did the covers. Oh yeah, they look beautiful. I had them do the intake. And there they are, the brake cam levers. I was looking everywhere for those, and just as a reminder, make yourself a list of the things you're sending, not just in the box of the things you're sending. So, get this box out of here. There we are. We're ready to start building the motor. Now everything's out of the paint booth. I've got the front end here. We're going to get this to a roller situation. So the first thing is to get the steering stem bearings in, and then we'll move on to the rear axle, brakes, and tire situation so we can get it into a roller. Then probably move on to a engine build once we get all 3 wheels and tires on there. Got the front steering stem in, and everything's working properly. I don't want to go into huge detail on that because I'm sure there's many videos on how to do the steering stem. So this is about as far as I can get with this because I measured the rear brake shoes, and I just kind of gambled. I didn't even check them, and I didn't order new ones, and they were right at the service limit. They actually were 2 millimeters thick, 2.5 millimeter, and the service limit is 2, so I just could not put it back together with the shoes being so close. So I'm going to move on to the motor. So we have our cases back. They're looking beautiful, and as you can see, I have installed the transmission bearings, and they're in this side case. And now I'm going to do the seals and then hopefully join these cases together. And there again, there's videos on how I did this. Was I put this side case in the oven at 170 for like 20, 25, 30 minutes. Get it up to 170, and then I froze these probably in there for about 5-6 hours in the freezer, and these just fell right in. Just boom, just fell in. These did not. These I put a dowel on it, a brass dowel, and I hit it, and it took a lot of pressure to put that in there, more than I thought. And it's seated. Oh, look at those cases, they're so beautiful. And so now with the transmission waiting, we'll get all the seals in, and then we'll install the crank. I want to clean up the crank a little. There's a little bit of surface rust here, so I want to take care of that. And then we'll put a gasket on it and bolt it together. I wanted to take a second to show you how clean these gears are, and they're just, they're like right in here. You can barely see any wear in there, and they're all in great shape. No pitting and no chips. So it keeps me coming back to this thing not having many hours on it. That's what everybody wants to believe. But nonetheless, it's in good condition. You can see it's in good workable condition without a lot. Getting everything ready to put back together, and now I'm fired up on the plating because I've got the case bolts that I've got to plate, and then there's a couple other little pieces, so I'm going to plate those, and I've got this properly torqued, and clean up a few little things, and we should be good to put the case. All right, the plating's done. So I've got the case bolts, got the engine mount bolts, and then I've got the studs for the head and cylinder. I also cleaned up the threads on the end of this crank. It was pretty bad. I don't know what happened. I think most of the threads on the old nut just kind of attached itself to the crank, but now it's just butter. So it's time to install. The transmission is in, and it went in pretty good. Just to tell you, if it won't go in, it's because this shaft is slightly larger than this shaft. And the way this transmission works is the larger output shaft, which is on the other end of this one, going out, where you put the sprocket on for the chain. One of these is slightly larger, so it actually, I mean, it just basically won't go in right. It only goes in one way. And then you've got thrust washers, which are different sizes on here and here. So you can't really mix those up either. You can get one on, but if it's on wrong, the other one won't go on because the shaft is too big. So make sure you got all your little pins in here. You've got your oil pump drive shaft and they call that a cam chain guide. And I put a little oil around here, a little oil on the transmission. Just, drops of oil. I put some down here on the crank and a little in the bearing. So I'm going to drop the crank in. And there it is. It may not be in all the way because I don't think my blocks are up high enough. No, they're not up high enough. That nut's hitting the ground. So I lift it up. There it is, seated. So I'm going to make sure that this is all I've got to do on the inside, and then I'm going to put a gasket on it. Now the manual does not call for gasket sealant, and I really don't want to use it because I don't think that the factory used it, because if you look at the cases on a factory unit, there's just no, any of the sealant splooging out between the case and the gasket. So I'm going to just run with that and then use these beautiful new plated bolts to button it up. One more thing to note with all the ominous music in the background. These bearings are different sizes. These are the same size, same number. These are different sizes. And I was in a hurry, and I'm so lucky that I didn't put the wrong one in the wrong spot. I was very, very lucky because I would have just ruined another set of bearings. So just a word to the wise, science it out, think it out before you install it. I did the freezing technique of the bearings and heated these in the cases. The cases in the oven worked out really well. These just dropped right in. These had to be hammered. So let's continue on. As you can see, it says install a new crankcase gasket and join the right crankcase to the left half. So that is what I'm going to do. I do not want to put sealant on. I had a little issue with the oil pump drive. You can see it in there. When I used a screwdriver to tighten it, there's the threads, and then I held this blocking it with a screwdriver to the torque, it kind of put a little narf on the slot, on the exterior of the slot, so it wasn't sliding in here very good. So you want to make sure that your sprocket spins very freely in and out, moves in and out really nice and free. So there it is. There they are. All the bolts are in. Now I'm going to torque them. We've got all the shifting mechanisms in. Everything works fine. We've got the wheels on. We have the clutch on. So, on to the other side. It was a long day of plating. I must have plated 3/4 of the bolts. Well, it was a long day, and I broke away from the engine because I needed a few things plated to finish the engine. Plus, I also have a few other things to do before I can go any further on the engine. But it took 12 hours. I plated everything on the bike. I plated all of pieces, everything I'm going to need, maybe with the exception of one or two things that might be forgotten. But I did have the chance to put the rear axle and the whole brake system on. And I was, like I said, I was waiting for these bolts. They needed to be plated. And I've got the arm on here. And look at that. There's hardly, I mean, just a little bit of play there. The shoes are literally new. Or are they? And sometimes you just don't see these you know, real life screw ups. So anyhow, I was measuring the thickness of the brake shoes, the old ones that came with it, and they measured like 2.5, and the service limit is 2, and so 2 millimeters. I go, you know, if they were nearly new or half of service, then this little arm, you know, would move. Oh, you know, it'd move much more than this if you had half the service limit. And then when it gets really down to like the nitty gritty, this arm moves way up here. And in order to adjust it, you've got to thread the rod, you've got to thread the adjuster way up. And so you've got this big long rod sticking out. It just looks like you haven't taken care of the bike. And all it is it's just right at the edge of being time to replace the pads. But so I ordered a brand new set of pads. I measured them, 2.5. And I go, what the heck is going on? The ones that were on it were 2.5, and these are 2.5, or maybe 2.7. And then I noticed, this is real life screw ups, I noticed that I was in inches. So there's the millimeters, and there is 6.4, 6.5. So I didn't put the new ones on, I put the originals on. Those pads show no wear, and this thing's never been apart. So it's another sign that there's just not any time on this bike. It's just cosmetic. So now we'll go ahead and continue working on this back. I might jump back on the motor, but for now we're going to start and install the sprockets and the rest of this axle. There is the axles installed with the sleeves. Turns smoothly. No grinding. No like hopping or anything like that. So I'm going to leave the cotter pins out for now till I get the wheels on, or maybe even before, but I just want to make sure everything goes on with the engine and the chain and the covers and all. So what I've done is I cleaned and taped off the cylinder head, or cylinder, and I painted, because the next step is to continue on the motor. Now that I got a few things that I was missing, and I was able to plate a few parts, like the drain plug, the clutch adjustment stuff, I can continue on with this. Now, the rings, I have installed the rings. There was some issue on whether or not what ring went where, but you see there's a kind of a beveled gap on both sides of that top ring, and there's a little N that's right on the edge. See, where is that gap? Right here. You're not going to be able to see it, but there's a little N right in there on the top of the ring gap. Yeah, you won't see it. And then the squared off, darker colored, which it's hard to tell. They both look the same color, but now that I'm looking at it in the video, they do look black and gray. So the second ring is a squared off, just square, no bevels inside or outside, and then it's a one-piece oil ring. And I'll space those out. You can look online how that works. And as always, you mount it with this little arrow pointing down with the exhaust cutout, which is always the biggest, or nearly always the biggest, on the top. So we're going to mount that, and when the cylinder dries, we'll put the piston cylinder together, and I'm using some assembly lube. There's also one of the biggest games of the year is always Ohio State and Michigan. Put the circlip on the wrist pin. Now we've got to get the circlip on this side. Installed the head bolts and alignment dowels. Nice painted, beautiful cylinder, all honed, new rings. Gap is for the compression ring. The top compression ring is on the top, and then 120 degrees over here is the second ring, and 120 degrees over here is the oil ring gap. That's what I picked up online. That's what I think is the way to go. And so now just make sure everything's on. The base gasket, there's a little oil seal down here. The oil seal's on. So it's time to slide it on now. You can do this by hand from what I've told, and I've done it on numerous 50s, Zuma 50s. I've done so many of those. So let's put it on. There it is on. And just for kicks, you know, with all the excitement, I checked to see if the oil seal was in there, and it was, and it fell out. So double check that, and let's put that oil seal back on. And here we go. Put it down, torque it to about 85, 87 inch-pounds, and spin it over just to make sure that it's smooth. And it's velvet smooth. All right, the cam chain tensioner. This is the little rubber end. This is just a little end here with a bevel. You can see where there's a little mark here where the keeper or the set screw, whatever you'd like to call it, went on it, and it looks like it'd never been out, or you'd have seen it in different locations. So that goes up in there, and I would assume that the flat area on it would face towards this hole that would have the set screw in it. And then the spring goes in. This little screw adjuster. Put that on. Don't know how far to screw that in, so I'm just going to kind of put it there. And hopefully I can get this tensioner to orient itself. There we go. So there's a flat area on it. I'm going to keep it facing the set screw. Here's the set screw. You can see I've got a little bit of anti-seize on there because it's got a seal. There's probably a little oil that'll go in there, but I don't want it to seize up. So here's the lock nut, a new seal, and that would go in right here. And this is just a little bit of fiddling. I'm looking for that shaft. Yeah, I can see the shaft move, so it's tight against the shaft. So I'm going to just snug it, and I'm going to snug this up, put the bottom cap on for now. And a brand new sealing washer onto a brand new plated bolt. Oh, geez, just look at that. So I'll seal that up, and then we'll start with the cam chain. And route the cam chain in here. You can see the tensioner, how it moves. I don't have a set pin set yet so that I can do the head and the valves and everything. And I've got the roller, the little guide wheel in there, or they call it guide roller. And then this nut, I put a sealing washer on there. Couldn't really see what it called for, but I figured a sealing washer would be good. And then it's about 80 inch-pounds. And this is where I'm going to stop because I've got to assemble the heads, or at least I've got to get the valves set in the head. So I'm going to have to lap the valves next. Well, the first thing I had to do was I had to clean out the valve guide. It had probably media that they used to clean this. So clean that out. I got the valve to sit in there really nice and pretty. Then I did the blue spray on there, and my spray wasn't working, so I just had to use a Q-tip, and I got it on there, and you can see the blue. Well, I could not believe it, but I put this valve in, and you can almost see the area that I lapped it. Now I'm using valve lapping compound, and this stuff here is enough to last me my lifetime and whoever gets my shit's lifetime. So I put a little valve lapping compound on it. I used the valve lapper, and this thing's sealed. I mean, it didn't take, honestly, I don't think I did, but maybe 20 revolutions, 30 revolutions. So this head was in just excellent condition. I mean, basically it was perfect. Because, I mean, I really didn't have to cut anything. And I have a seal all the way around. I don't know if you can see in there, but I may take a little bit more on each one just to make sure. But, oh my gosh, I'm very happy. So we'll be able to move on rather quickly here. Well, I kept using the grinding compound, and I really like the exhaust. I think that it's got an even, it's the lighter colored ring that you see down here, that ring right there, and it's even all the way around. The intake, see if it'll focus for me here. The intake shows fairly even until it gets over here. And it just seems a little thin. But I ground and ground. They're making a seal. So I'm going to put it together. I'm just going to do the old trick of putting fluid in here and seeing if anything leaks out through the valves. And if they don't leak, I think I'm good. So there's a lot going on here, seeing as I'm not familiar with the CT70 or the ATC70, which is the same motor. And a lot of the instruction manuals just refer to the CT70 for instructions on, inside the head rebuilding, that sort of thing. So a lot of question marks. And one was, because I had the older head, I saw that there was a shim right in here. And it was the valve seat, or spring seat they call it. And it was a large outside one. And that in there, it was basically stuck in there. And when I had the head cleaned, it was still in. And this is it here. So it was good that I found that, because I pulled them out and cleaned them very well. This is just an old head that I have. So I got that in. I got those pieces out, got it all cleaned up inside, and then started looking at the schematic. And let me lay this down so I can show you the schematic. And if you notice, over on this side, this is the intake valve. It's got the seal, the little hat, or they call it seal holder. And this is that ring that I just showed you. This is the washer. It's the seat for the large spring. And it's not showing anything other than just the larger ring here. So all of these pieces here, and then, your keepers. So this is all the same. But on the exhaust, they have another shim here, and they call it the inner, seat, valve seat, number 13 here. So 12 is 12, so these are the same, and it's a small one. So I basically pulled the head back apart, I had already put this in, and checked to see if I could find it, and I have them. And I found it on one of these hats. It's a very small, very, very small. And I'm saying this because I looked at all the videos online, and none of them really go into how to put the valves back in. So you have a small shim and you have a large shim. This is the large shim that rests right down into the casting, right next to the valve guide. And on the, the exhaust side, it's showing this ring here. Now there's 3 or 4 of them, and this is all because of extra parts I have, but I'm going to install it the way that the diagram says. The only issue might be the diagram could be wrong, and these go on both sides. And that's the only question. So I'm going to go with the diagram because that's Honda, and we'll just see how that looks. All right, I got both valves in, and then what I do and what I've seen done is once you've got the keepers in and the spring tension on the valve, you put a socket over it here, just like so, and then you pop it with a hammer a couple of times to compress the spring to see if the keepers are going to stay. And I've really never had one not stay. It's kind of a safety thing, but I did it on this other side, and the keepers gave loose. So I have some brand new keepers. I'm going to put all 4 brand new keepers on this just to be on the safe side. And there's the valves installed. And this is a trick I've always used, which is fill this with lacquer thinner and see if it leaks out. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything seeping or leaking. So that just tells me it's a tight seal. So we'll go forward with the head and install. The crank has that little pin in it right there. That should be facing straight forward. And then if you stretch this cam sprocket out, there's a little timing mark. It's a little 0 right here. And that, before I put this head on, I stretched it out, made sure it was straight forward. And I'm lining up these 3 holes here in the cam so that when I slide the head on and move that gear in, hopefully it's all timed and we just tighten it up. So I pushed everything forward, made sure the little seals were in, that the dowels lined up, and then I put this one bolt in to hold it. And I pulled the cam up, and you can see a little 0 there. And that should be forward, straight forward. And the crank pin should be shooting straight forward. So that is just about perfect. And the 0 is, you can see there's a little alignment, little niche, little notch right there. And that 0 is right on the notch. And the crank is forward. Now I put these on finger tight, the cam nuts here. And I put the front cover on with the gasket. And these bolts have the copper washer and the regular nut on the bottom cam gear side. And then the others, they go with the acorn nuts. And then we're going to do a crisscross pattern and torque those down. That way the cam and everything is in alignment when I tighten these and adjust the valve. And they're torqued to 8 foot-pounds or 95 or so inch-pounds. And it torqued down nice. All right, correction. The nut goes here with a silver sealing washer. Now I took them all off. I used the original sealing washers, and I had bought 3 new sealing washers, so I went ahead and put on the new sealing washers here. But this is the makeup this is how it's shown on the schematic from Honda, so I'm going to go with that. Some of the videos show this nut and the copper washer over here, but I think this is the way it's supposed to go. It's early Sunday morning, but I'm still working. In order to tighten the cam sprocket, I used a crush washer wedged between the teeth with something to keep it from falling in the case in case it falls out, and 66 inch-pounds. 66. Now we're going to move on to the side cover. I've got the clutch pieces here. They just go on as so. sits down the bearing. That faces the shaft. Little spring. And the flange goes inside the spring. Like so. You know you're okay when you feel a little pressure there, a little spring resistance. And then the arm. Slides on just like so. This piece goes from the back side up. Here's another place where you get conflicting diagrams with parts and how they go together. So you've got the back piece here, and there's a pin that slides in here, and the shaft, it's adjustable. You can see what that is on the diagram, but what the problem is the diagram from Rocky Mountain or Partzilla, it shows the seal, a washer of some sort, the big round washer, and the nut. But if you go to Dr. ATV and you look under their diagrams, you'll see that there's the big round part that's inside, there's the threaded rod, so to speak, and it only shows a seal, that big outer washer, and the nut. So conflicting things here, but I'm just going to put it together this way. And here is where taking more and more pictures as I disassemble things will really help. And there it is installed. Now let's put the side cover on. The first thing I do is put just a hair, just a little, not much grease at all, just a little grease along all the mating surface. And then I don't do that on the cover. I leave this just like it sits. That way when you pull it off for servicing or whatever, the gasket will sit on this and this will remain clean. And I don't use, any silicone or gasket material, liquid sealant or anything, unless it becomes a problem, because it's just such a mess to scrape off. Lay the gasket on, mount the cover. Oh, maybe I'm upside down. It took a little wiggling because the clutch arms in there, and I can feel a little tension, and so we're probably gonna need to adjust that, or it could be just perfect. And put the bolts on. There's only 2 long ones that go here, and all the rest are the same size, and it's so much easier to tell when they're brand new and plated. .84 inch-pounds. I'm going to do the top here, or the head side cover. I've got to polish this. I did a little work on it, getting all the corrosion off of it, And I'm just going to do a quick polish on the polishing wheel. But for now, I've got this little bit of oil. Or grease, excuse me, a little bit of grease. And the cover. And I'm just taking them down snug until I can put the bolt through here and the other cover here. So once I've got that, so I've got this cover underneath, then I'll tighten all three at the same time. And another real life screw up, which you don't see in the videos, I like to show them in mine. I put this seal in. Well, this threads in. This is the neutral indicator. And it screws in very nicely, right? But there's a backing washer. And that backing washer goes like this behind this seal. So I've got to pull this seal out. Hopefully I don't destroy it, but because I order more than I should, I have a new seal. And let's see how it goes. All right, I got it out. I just pried up with a screwdriver. I've cleaned it up to see if I destroyed the inner lip. And it doesn't look as so. I think it'll go right back in. And then this is where the washer goes. And that's where you thread it in. But without that washer, which almost went in the case, by the way, without that washer behind there, the shift drum just might move back and forth. So don't want that. You see, there it is. There's the seal. There's that washer. It's reinstalled, lubed it up. Thread this in. All right, so this is the stator. I cleaned it up. I took it to my Honda guy and he said that everything looks good and I should just put it back in, and then if I need to, of course, adjust the points, maybe even file them a little bit. I do it with a little sandpaper and oil this up, or grease. So while I've got it out, I'm going to replace the seal. And it came right out of there, but you know, it's dry, it's old. And there is the new seal. So we'll get that in there. All right, I lubed up the seal here, and I'm cleaning with a little bit of lacquer thinner and a Q-tip the sealing area of the big O-ring. And I also put a new O-ring on the neutral switch. A lot went on since the last clip, and really all it was these two screws. Behind them, there's a little hollowing out area for a rubber seal, an O-ring. And I played and played and played. I have the old ones. And I looked through the seal kit. Nothing looked quite right. These could have been what was sent, but they didn't look quite big enough. So I went into my selection of seals, just the regular Harbor Freight nitrate seals, metric, and I found one really close. So they're behind that, and then I gave these a little lub tap with the impact screwdriver bit, just to snug them. I snugged them as hard as I could myself, then snugged them up just a hair more. I've got to tighten this up. I've got a keeper for this. I've got to mount this, and this is basically just goes right in here. And I'll And there it is mounted. And I believe that's the orientation. The little rubber grommet goes here, and the rubber grommet goes there. So next is the flywheel. I cleaned up the flywheel. There was a little rust. There's a little rust here. You can see right here. I'm still going to get more of that out. You know, and I just cleaned it up. It's going to do fine. All right, the flywheel's on. And what I did, because if you remember, the end of the crank had, the threads were a little messed up. So I ordered a new nut, and because I had to recut those threads, you know, I was a little nervous that I'd taken, you know, enough off where the, you know, this might want to just strip out. But it did torque down to the minimum limit. I'm going to leave it at that. And so that's really good news. That's on there. Everything's looking good. And this is really a good time to check the timing. So I lined up the T right on the notch. And then you go down and you look for the 0. And I'm going to spin this camera around. And it's right on. There's not even any timing chain slack. Sometimes the slack in the timing chain means that this 0 would be down a little, and if you adjusted by 1 tooth, then it would be way too tall here in the timing sequence. So this just shows me that the chain is good, it's not stretched, and the timing's right. Okay, so I pulled the pull starter ring off because I need to get in here and adjust the points. Can you see the points closing? It's hard to see the arm in there moving? That little arm right there. So the idea is that they close when this F mark is somewhere around this mark. And I've got them set just about as well as I possibly can. That is about it. So the idea is that it's coming along here and opening the points and firing right before top dead center. That's your timing. So the idea is also when it's open, when these points are open, the gap is 0.3 to 0.4 millimeters. And so I'm at the 0.3. Now I don't know if widening them out, I think widening them out will actually, what will happen there? Actually, widening them out would have me I'm going to widen those out just a hair and get these to open right at the, and I think I've got it just about perfect. I polished the cap, and I did that because I don't typically, I just buy a new one or an OEM one, but I couldn't wait, so I just polished it. That was the finished polishing. I did the whole thing with the sandpaper and everything. All right, there it is. It's done. The valves are adjusted, the points are adjusted, the timing set, everything's ready for it to go on to the frame. Got the wheels and tires on her. Starting to look like a little 70, isn't it? Next is the engine. And the engine's in, and we're going to get the foot pegs on before I torque down the engine, just so that it locates itself properly, and then I'll tighten everything up. The rear steps are on, and the engine mounting bolts are all torqued. Next is the chain. And we got the side cover on, and the chain guard. And now we're just putting in the little plug here for your oiling area. And put the skid plate on. And this is when it really kind of goes fast. The front fender, I torqued this. I'm going to put a cotter pin in that next. Got the chain guards, figured out the rear or bottom skid plate and all the bolting there. So we're going to be moving on up to the handlebar. And there's the bars and the number plate. I torqued all these down. And now we're getting ready for the bar pad. And I went on a sticker spree. Got all the graphics on the tailpiece. I've still got some to put on here. I'll do that. And the tank just looks beautiful, doesn't it? It's starting to look like a little ATC Christmas present. And there is the graphics on the plastics, and the rear graphic emission sticker, and the brake. Look at that beautiful brake in there. And it works just like butter. And the graphic on the side. Always have a scratch. It's never going to be up here where you never see it. And I got the grips, the brake lever. Getting real close. All that on the front number plate or whatever, or what have you. And if anyone can answer a question whether there's a location for this sticker, it says all terrain cycle. Now I know on the 185 it goes on the front right there. There's the shop. But on here, there isn't any place that looks like it. I mean, it could go here or here. It could go on the fender. I just haven't located a picture yet. So if anybody knows, just ring in. And we just keep moving on. And that's what it looks like on. We're still waiting for the seat cover. I'm going to do the pull starter next. But it's looking really good. Chico? Oh, Chico just said informed me the seat cover's held up because of supply line issues coming from Thailand. Is that right, Chico? Really? Oh no, tell me it's not so. It's not? Chico just dropped this off to me. We got the seat cover from Thailand. And it's always a quality seat cover. I just opened it, so I haven't really inspected it thoroughly, but you know, everything's, I guess they call this heat pressed. So it all just looks original when you put it on. And I'm going to get on that, but first I rebuilt the blasting cabinet a little bit. I put a LED light in it. So I'm going to take, and in order to do the seat, I'm going to refinish the seat mount, and I'm going to do the exhaust at the same time. So here's a before on the exhaust and the seat bracket. Blasted, primed, and after. This stuff does a really good job. That's the PJ1 satin. It goes up to 500 degrees. And as you can see, all the lettering and everything is coming through. It's going to look really pretty once I get it on the bike. So let's get the seat cover on. And to do that, I'm going to have to pull this off of the rack. So this seat has these little metal tabs, and they're little pointed tabs, and they prick through the vinyl, and then you bend them over. So I'm just going to take all these, bend them out, and pull this cover off. And you can see how this is really a good seat. I'm really amazed, because usually when you bend these tabs back to get this seat cover to come off, they're so rusted that they just fall off in your hand, some of them, you know. And then I use the little self-tapping screws, whatever you have to do when you've got an old seat, and you know, you paint it and do what you can. But so I'll get the rest of this cover off. So there, all of the little tabs, and not a single one broke off. So let's just see if we get this off and see what our foam looks like. That's the only question at this point. Oh my gosh, it's like perfect. This is a trick that people use, and when they put on a seat cover, but I am getting the impression that this is factory stuff here. Oh yeah, this seat cover is not, it's just going to be beautiful. The new cover on it, the foam's perfect. So there's the seat cover, and this is the Thailand seat cover. My hands are a little dirty from that old seat, but you see it's got a beautiful Honda emblem on it. Like I said, they do a great job. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean up the bottom of this while it's apart, and then we'll put the seat cover on it. I'm taking off the rubber seal. This is all factory. You see these little pieces of tape here that hold it on? That's all factory. This seat is original and in great condition. So I'm going to take off the little plastic piece. I'm going to clean it separately. Then I'm going to clean the pan here, and I'll show you how I put this back on with just a little bit of adhesive. The foam just came right off, and what this plastic was is it was laid between the foam and the pan. All right, I cleaned it, and I've had a lot of seats, and you know these bikes are very old and not well kept, and seeing a lot of water and outside exposure. So these seat pans are never like this. They are never like this. This seat pan right here, I probably could get $120 for this seat, or maybe even $150 for just the seat pan, because it just doesn't have any rust. I did not have to clean this. I just rinsed it and used a little soft bristle brush, and it's gloss black. So you've got the little strips here, and these strips go on, and what they're doing is they're going to keep the seat cover from being split open by this sharp metal edge. So what I put on there is the regular 3M black super weather strip and gasket adhesive, and I just do a little dab here and there, because really this never had any adhesive. It had these little pieces of tape that would fold over. So let's put this on. So I've got a little bit on here, just a bit around. I'm going to start at the corner where I know that corner is set. And then I'm going to carry it around here and into this. And then I'll start here. And it all should come together just like it came off. Okay, so I've got the black strip on here that protects the seat cover from the sharp metal. I put the little bit of tape back on. It'll give it a, it'll give it a look of, because this seat cover is so nice, it'll actually look like this seat is an original seat. And I also put the plastic back underneath the foam. So, anyone who really knows what they're looking at will look at this and yeah, it is what it is. But most of these are on their second and third seat cover, and all this is lost, and so I'm just going to try and preserve as much as I can of it. So, get the seat, get it tucked, get it the line right here pretty much center, and then push it as far back as possible. It's a little tough to get this on. It's tight. And I would say just a little at a time and get this up over. Get this one up over. It's kind of walked a little bit, so let's get it back over this way a little bit. And yeah, that's looking good. There we go. And maybe that's enough to just kind of get it to come this way. I don't want to mess up this foam at all. There we go. Okay, we're getting there. So it is very tight, and it probably would have gone on a lot easier had I put the little, cellophane. You get that plastic wrap, kitchen plastic wrap, and you put it over the foam, and then you put the seat cover. It allows it to slide easier. But I didn't want something that wasn't OEM underneath it. So you just got to keep pushing it, holding it, and running it down. And just keep getting it down. Sooner or later, it's gonna get on there. And you can see I finally got this to come across the back and the front. So I'm going to keep working it till I can get this down and attach two here and attach two here, and then I'll roll it all else, the sides and everything, and clip them. What makes this even more of a challenge is these sharp little things, they just get you. All right, I finally got the first two right on here, and the line, stitch line, right on the plastic here. I like the way that this is laying right here, the front of the seat. I like this stitch right where it's at. I'm going to pull a little tighter, and then I'm going to attach two there. And there are two attached, two attached. So what you've got is you've got the front to rear, you've got that right. Now all this slack is going to come from pulling in the sides. So I've got this around to here, and now I'm starting to do this side, and you can see how it already is taking shape. This is going to go back, but you can see how this seat cover fits this. It's fitting it very tightly, but that's okay. It's looking great. And there it is. I did as much as I could take. I even got to a point where a little bit of the stitching started to show up there. It didn't break, but it started to separate a little bit, but that's okay. I mean, you've got a $40 seat cover here, but it looks fantastic. And it is just going to fit perfect on that little ATC70. And there's the seat on. And I even have the bracket on. I'm not going to mount everything permanently. And I'm going to be probably stalled here because of chrome. They're saying like 6 weeks. Ugh. I'm going to have to find a chrome shop. Anybody know of a good one that I can send my stuff to that, you know, can turn it around in a couple of weeks? That would be great. So there she is. Now I'm going to be getting the little insulator pieces from Dr. ATV to do the intake manifold, and then I've got the new carburetor. So that's going to be probably next up, and I'm waiting for those insulators, so that's going to be a couple days. But it really is taking shape, and it looks so beautiful. It's just a fun little thing that, I mean, you could just display it and people would look at it. So we'll get onto that carb, and there it is on. Now I'm waiting for, there are 2 shims that go in here that is kind of a spacer, so that this plate right here will be down lower. So I'm holding off on all of the last little things like this rubber boot. Just holding off for one last order. So some things will be just kind of tacked together right now. Now that the exhaust is on, we're going to put the coil on. And what I do is I take the moto tool. Let's see if I can get in here. It's not going to show it, but anyhow, what I'm doing is I'm shining up. I'm taking the paint off so you can get a shiny metal to get a good contact with the frame. Now, I'm not sure if it really needs it, but I always like to do that. And I'm chasing the threads to get us just as good a contact as possible. Get those threads all cleaned up, and we'll get that coil on. And I also forgot the rubber boot that goes right in there. So I took everything off. I had to take this off, just to put this rubber piece in. Now it's in. I've got the neutral marker on. So it's time to go to the pull starter. And look at what I found in my parts department. Chico came up with this beautiful shifter. Chico said he found it when he was looking for his treats and was just excited and brought it in. So this is, I'm not going to have to wait for the chrome, the one that I sent to chrome plating. I'll be able to put that on, and I'm going to work now on the pull starter. So here it is. It's actually in really good shape. It just needs to be restored. And here is the brand new Honda rope and Honda pull handle. So here is a before, and there is the pull starter all restored, and that beautiful shift lever installed. And it works really well. And straighten it up. Looks beautiful on the side of there. So this is going to be the spot where I am going to go ahead and end this segment. It's almost complete, but I'm going to be waiting so long for the chrome that I'm going to need to finish this thumb throttle. And I really can't do the carburetor. I guess I could put it on, but I can't do much with it till the thumb throttle is operational. So this will end this video, I mean, it's practically done, but I will be able to do another video, a final video, I guess you would say. This could be the final, but one that just shows the carburetor installation, the thumb throttle, and its initial startup, and that sort of thing. So we'll put that onto the last video. It'll be short, and the shorter the better for those in Shingletown. Their attention span is very, very short. But Joe has a lot of patience for the videos, so I appreciate you, Joe. And until the next video, we'll see you then. Oh, and a couple other things that I wanted to explain. This video got real choppy. I know that some things were upside down. I know that it may not flow together very well, but you get the idea. And I'm sure if you're like me, you're just looking for the content of how to do something. But I wanted to explain that because, and doesn't it look good next to the 185? We're getting closer. Get that 200 next to it. Oh, you'll have a whole lineup, just like in the showroom when in 1983 around Christmas time, when they had the blue one, the Christmas special. So anyhow, the reason it's chopped up is, again, I'm trying to do 2 videos at once, and I'm having to separate them and keep them in their folders for each bike, and then try and stitch them together. It's a lot of work, and this one is what I'm on to now. So this kind of, it screws up. It's hard to keep things straight, especially ordering the parts. I know there's some parts that once I get the chrome back that I'm going to need, and I haven't ordered those yet. Some shims for the exhaust and so forth. So that's why it's choppy. We've got the CT70 going. I know I'm going to get complaints out of Shingletown. I already feel them. I feel Joe's fingers hitting the keyboard. I can feel him now. He even knows this video's coming before it's on YouTube. So Joe, just go ahead, give it to me. I know it was rough. So until the next video, we'll see you later.